Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Inter-American Coalition for Regulatory Convergence, Virtual Training GRPs and TBT, Part 4 of 4. My name is Kim Pittenger with AdvaMed, and I will be today's webinar facilitator along with my colleague Erin Leahy. Before we get started, I'd like to announce some housekeeping items. Each participant is in listen-only mode, meaning that your line is muted. There will be a Q&A session during the presentation. Please type your questions in the questions/chat function within your GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Please also note this presentation is being recorded. Many platforms have experienced an influx of use in recent months, so should you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, first attempt to exit the broadcast and rejoin. There is a link to a general troubleshooting guide in the chat box as well. If any of the panelists experience audio or technical difficulties, please let us know using the chat function. Today's webinar recording and the presenter's slides will be available to attendees within 24 hours of the conclusion of the broadcast at www.interamericancoalition-medtech.org. This concludes the housekeeping portion of our webinar. It is my pleasure to turn it over to Sandra Gonzalez to get us started.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning and welcome to the last of our series of webinars on regulatory policy. We are honored to host today Ana Patricia Pineda, International Regulatory Analyst for Medical Products at the US FDA, and we are very thankful to the FDA for their continued support to the coalition's activities. During today's sessions, we will be covering an overview of the FDA Latin America Office, also an overview of IMDRF structure, working groups, and their priorities, FDA Medical Device Division, the CDRH, and the Latin America related activities. We will also be reviewing how the FDA is engaging with IMDRF and how they are using international standards for medical device regulatory convergence through FDA standards and also conformity program and policies. And we will conclude Patricia's presentation also with a review of MDSAP and ISO 13485. We will follow that with a Q&A session, and we are really inviting and welcoming all our audience to tap in your questions so we may have them readily available by the time we get into that part of our presentation. And we will conclude this webinar as well as our series with some closing remarks from Stephen Vibes. So I will start by introducing Ana Patricia. She joined FDA Mexico on March 2013, where she has collaborated on the medical products portfolio of the Latin America office. She has a Bachelor on Sciences on Chemistry, Pharmacology, and Biology from Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México and the Master on Sciences degree on Toxicology from the Centro de Investigación y Estudios Avanzados del Instituto Politécnico Nacional. She started her professional career in the pharmaceutical industry in the production area. In 2001, she joined the Mexican government as head of the Toxicology Department of the Environmental Health General Directorate on the Ministry of Health of Mexico, participating in the development of the risk assessment area. For 10 years, Ms. Pineda was Manager of International Affairs on Drugs at the Federal Commission for Protection from Sanitary Risks, COFEPRIS, where she coordinated COFEPRIS participation and represented this regulatory authority in international fora regarding drugs, medical devices, dietary supplements, cosmetics, toxic substances, and pesticides, such as Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the WHO World Health Assembly, the Pan American Network for Drug Regulation Harmonization, PANDRA, the Pharmaceutical Regulators Forum, IPRF, the Global Health Task Force, GHTF, the US, Mexico, and Canada Trilateral Cooperation, the United Nations Environmental Programs, and among others. Ms. Pineda also represented APEC as a regional harmonization initiative at an International Conference of Harmonization, ICH. Patty, thank you again for having accepted our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sandra. I really appreciate the invitation to participate in the webinar. Good morning. As Sandra mentioned, I'm Patricia Pineda, International Regulatory Analyst of the Latin America Office of the Food and Drug Administration. Next slide, please. First, the content of this presentation and my intervention is intended only to provide a summary and a general overview of the topics I am going to address. It is not intended to be comprehensive, nor does it constitute legal advice. Next, please. Okay, since the Latin America office of the FDA, or LAO, is not yet very well known, I'm going to start by explaining who we are, where we are posted, and most importantly, what we do. The FDA has foreign offices in China, you can see it in green, India in yellow, Europe, that covers all the countries in blue, navy blue, and those countries that are not covered by foreign offices are highlighted in orange, and those are under the global engagement team that is posted in headquarters. In light blue, you can see all the countries that are under the Latin America office. It opened 10 years ago, and it comprises 3 offices. The first one was opened in 2009 in San Jose, Costa Rica, and it is where our director, the regional director, is based, and this office is mainly focused on food. The second office to be opened for the Latin America was the one in Santiago de Chile, that currently is completely devoted to food. And the last one, opened in 2010, is the office in Mexico City, where I am based. And this office deals with food, and currently is from where we manage also the medical products portfolio for the whole region. The foreign office's main activities are inspections and international engagements, including regulatory convergence efforts. Next, please. At the beginning, the Latin America office was completely focused on food. It was until 2012 that it started activities related to all medical products under FDA authority. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to discuss only those activities related to medical devices. On medical devices, we have participated in the National Regulatory Authorities of Regional Reference, where we meet with 7 regulatory authorities in the region to address regulatory challenges and foster regulatory alignment and information sharing. Mainly on medical devices, we have addressed all the criteria and requirements for medical devices inspections. LAO also participates in the steering committee of the Pan American Drug Regulatory Harmonization Network, PANDRA, and recently we have also contributed to the Medical Devices Regional Working Group led by the Pan American Health Organization. Our office not only aims to regulatory convergence, but it is the most important point, but also contributes to improve the understanding of our regulation and processes in the region. We do that through outreach activities such as the one today, because we believe that as the industry understands our regulations and what we expect from them, the compliance of the products will enhance, which I see as a win-win situation. As you know, the FDA has actively participated in the development and current activities of the International Medical Devices Regulators Forum, the IMDRF, and also on the Medical Devices Single Audit Program, that is the MDSAP. And having experienced firsthand the benefits of the work of these 2 initiatives, our office, in collaboration with the CDRH, has focused on promoting the participation and engagement of the regulatory agencies in the region in these initiatives. We have offered workshops with the participation of CDRH experts. For example, we have one on September last year at the PAHOS Working Group on Medical Devices meeting. And also, we have developed specific bilateral activities with agencies in the region, such as ANMAT from Argentina and COFEPRIS from Mexico. Next, please. So, why is our office focusing efforts on the International Medical Devices Regulators Forum? Next. Thank you. IMDRF was launched in 2012. And it is a voluntary group of medical device regulators that came together to build on the work of the Global Harmonization Task Force on Medical Devices, the GHDF, you may remember that one. In order to accelerate international medical device regulatory convergence, that means we wanted to do it faster because medical devices technologies move really quick. We also wanted to address common regulatory challenges on medical devices and promote innovation through clear regulation expectations. The current members are Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Europe, Japan, Russia, Singapore, South Korea, and the United States of America. As you can see in the slide, the IMDRF has a management committee. It is composed of regulatory officials only, and it provides guidance on the strategies, policies, directions, memberships, activities of the IMDRF, and also oversees the working groups. The IMDRF also has official observers designated by the management committee. Currently, the World Health Organization is the only official observer. Observers don't participate in the decision-making process. The IMDRF also has the participation of regional harmonization initiatives. Since, as we all know, in the globalized world of medical devices, it is important, if not imperative, to maintain working relations with other initiatives. The idea is avoid duplication of efforts and divergent approaches. Hence, the IMDRF invites the participation of regional harmonization initiatives that have a mutual interest in medical device regulatory activities and that are directly related to fostering global convergence, leveraging resources, and making available safe and effective medical devices. As observers, the regional harmonization initiatives don't take part in the decision-making process, okay? But currently, the regional harmonization initiatives that are invited to the IMDRF are the Regulatory Harmonization Steering Committee of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, the Asian Harmonization Working Party, and the Pan American Health Organization. The last element that is not depicted in the slide are the working groups, but I will talk about those a little bit later. Can I have the next, please? Okay. The IMDRF chair and secretariat rotates on an annual basis. This year is Singapore's time, and it will go to South Korea next year. The IMDRF usually met face-to-face twice per year. These meetings are hosted by the chair in turn, and they are held in March and September. The first meeting of this year was virtual, given the current public health emergency, and these meetings are composed by three main parts. The first one is a public meeting where stakeholders are welcome to attend and in which the management committee provides updates on the jurisdictions, the participant regulatory authorities, and on the IMDRF working group's progress. In this meeting, the stakeholders may provide input to the planning strategies. They can also suggest topics to be included in the work plan or discuss the work products. Then we have the Management Committee caucus with reports from the subcommittees and working groups, and at the end, the Management Committee caucus with the adoption of the meetings report. All the work planned and reported in these meetings is conducted throughout the year intersessionally through teleconference and electronic media. Sometimes there are face-to-face meetings of the working groups, but those are very rare. Can I have the next one, please? As I mentioned, the IMDRF strives to accelerate regulatory convergence to promote efficient and effective regulatory models for medical devices. But what does regulatory convergence mean? As you know, there are several different definitions of regulatory convergence. These ones I heard 3 different definitions at the same workshop, and that's a little bit concerning. So for the purpose of the IMDRF, regulatory convergence means a voluntary process where the regulatory requirements and approaches across countries or regions become more aligned over time by adopting the same technical documents, standards, and scientific principles, as well as similar regulatory practices and procedures. I'd like to take some time on this concept. In the first 3 webinars of this series, you have listened about standards and how they are developed and their benefits. The regulatory convergence is about using the same standards, and that's the difference with harmonization. Regulatory convergence is not about developing the same laws and the same regulatory frameworks. It is about using the same standards and scientific principles within your own regulatory framework. So this, in principle, should avoid the duplication of regulatory requirements, should provide consistency in the review processes and the acceptance criteria, and also should provide predictability on the outcome of the regulatory decision-making process. And there is another benefit for us regulators. It facilitates the development of collaboration activities among regulatory authorities, since they will build on the same understanding, the same technical language, and the same criteria. This also facilitates information sharing and the use of relevant information and the exchange of scientific expertise. A very recent example of the benefits and the reason why we need to foster even more the regulatory convergence are the emergency authorizations. As you may know, some regulatory authorities issued emergency use authorizations for medical devices to respond to the COVID-19 emergency. These emergency use authorizations were based on the applicable consensus standards. For other regulatory authorities that already use the same standards, their process to decide whether to rely on those authorizations was less cumbersome than the one of those agencies whose regulatory requirements are not aligned with international consensus standards. All the benefits of all those efforts made at these initiatives and the investment of the participating regulatory authorities are even more evident when time and resources are critical, as is during an emergency. Next slide, please. Moving on to the working groups. Okay. The management committee oversees working groups. These have specific objectives and leverage expertise from various stakeholders depending on the document they are developing. For instance, if the working group is responsible for developing a technical document, it would generally involve the participation of stakeholders that have significant involvement in the development, manufacture, or use of medical devices. For example, the regulated industry, international entities, associations, academia, and of course other regulatory authorities, among others. However, if the work involves the exchange of sensitive or confidential information on or specificities about the internal procedures of the regulatory authorities, then the working group would only include representatives of the member regulatory authorities, and this decision is publicly informed to all the stakeholders. Currently, there are 7 working groups developing documents in the IMDRF, and they are addressing topics on adverse event terminology, good regulatory review practices, personalized medical devices, cybersecurity, in vitro diagnostic. And there are another working groups that already finished with their mandate and were closed. The topics they covered were the UDIs, the unique device identification, a patient registries, the software as a medical device. There were also a working group on medical device in the audit program, of which I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment. And the last closed working group was a working group on standards. FDA had a very, very active participation in the standards working groups, since the agency is invested in improving the regulatory use of standards. The work in the IMDRF is part of the standards strategy of the agency. Next one, please. Thank you. This is strategy, this is standard strategy. Can you go back, please? Thank you. The standard strategy of the agency is based in several laws and regulations. For example, we have that in 1995, Congress passed the National Technology Transfer and Advancement Act. This act was signed into law in 1996. The act specifically encouraged government agencies like the FDA to use standards developed by voluntary consensus bodies, instead of creating proprietary non-consensus standards. The law also encouraged agencies to participate and collaborate with interested parties in the standards development process. Additionally, we have the Office of Management and Budget, which is housed in the executive branch of the White House, that published a circular A119 in February of 1998. That circular established policies for federal agencies to follow in the development of voluntary consensus standards. It provided the original framework on conformity assessment activities and provided definition of commonly used terms such as standards and voluntary consensus standards. The circular established requirements for agency participation on standards committees and working groups, which includes a reporting requirement to Congress on an annual basis. The circular also includes requirements for incorporation of standards into agency regulations. Further, the FDA Modernization Act of 1997 changed Section 514C of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to allow for the formal recognition of a standard and added a procedure for accepting a declaration of conformity. This is very important because this applies to pre-market submissions. One of the programs the agency has developed to respond to these mandates is the Standards and Conformity Assessment Program. Okay, next please. Thank you. As mentioned in the previous webinars of this series, standards are an integral part to economic success that we learned in these past webinars. They also are part of efficient regulatory processes. And most importantly, at least for all regulatory authorities, they are an integral part to public health and safety. Their use is a key priority of the federal government, and as stated in the Circular 119, one of the goals is the elimination or reduction of government costs that could be incurred if agencies were to write their own standards. It costs a lot to develop by themselves. This provides an incentive for agencies to write standards that serve the national interest, to encourage long-term economic growth for the U.S. and to promote competition in the marketplace. For the FDA, evidence of conformity to one or more FDA-recognized standards is often a comprehensive and efficient way for a manufacturer to address certain questions of safety and or effectiveness. This is why FDA invests time and personnel into participating in various standard working groups so that the agency may have input in the development of these different medical standards. For manufacturers and FDA to benefit from this efficiency, FDA must have confidence in the declaration of conformity submitted by the device manufacturers in the pre-market submissions. Hence, the agency developed and published a final guidance document that describes the process to present the declaration of conformity as part of the submissions. This document is titled Appropriate Use of Voluntary Consensus Standards and Pre-Market Submissions for Medical Devices. You may find that document in our website and have it as reference. This is also the reason why FDA actively participates in initiatives that promote the use of standards at an international level, which in turn improves the access to innovative, safe, and effective devices. Next, please. The program is based in that standards are an integral part of a healthy regulatory system, and we promote their use in device submissions covering design, development, and evaluation throughout their complete life cycle. As I mentioned, the FDA Modernization Act of 1997 allowed for the formal recognition of a standard and added a procedure for accepting a declaration of conformity. The term recognition refers to FDA's identification of standards as appropriate to use in a medical device submission to satisfy that requirement. Okay? When FDA recognizes a new standard or a new version of an existing standard, the notice is made available through publication in the Federal Register and also through the FDA Recognized Consensus Standards database on the FDA website. In December 2016, Congress passed the 21st Century Cures Act, which added a timeframe for FDA action on a request for recognition of an appropriate standard. Also, it requires FDA to state the basis for its decision, either it is recognized or not, or just a part of it. Further, the Act required all FDA employees who review pre-market submissions to receive training on standards, and for FDA to develop a guidance document about the standards recognition process. These requirements enhance the current processes as well as increase transparency on FDA's decision to recognize the standards. Next, please. But in the program, we do more than simply manage a recognition program where manufacturers can cite standards in declaration of conformity. The Standards and Conformity Assessment Program also contribute to consensus standards development, both domestically and internationally. As the program staff are scientists, they are clinicians, engineers, scientists, they participate in SDO's technical committees, identifying needs and driving the publication of regulatory-ready standards. They are also strong participants in international efforts to harmonize how the standards are used around the world, along with the foreign offices, because we recognize that the fact that many manufacturers are global actors. In particular, our office, the Latin America office, works closely with CDRH and key regulatory agencies in the region, in the Latin America region, to identify collaboration opportunities that would allow us to enhance the use of standards in the region. We also are very mindful and take into consideration the local regulations and the characteristics of the medical device industry. Next, please. The program is an integral part of the center of the CDRH. It has 10 persons, that's the whole staff, and they have also hundreds of volunteers, standards liaisons. They keep the program running, these 10 persons. That means managing the recognition program, driving the use of standards, participating in national and international standards development meetings. They promote regulators' priorities, they promote regulators' education and training. The program they run is like a standards developing organization. They do it with transparency and precision, and always with an eye toward anticipating future medical needs. Their idea is to encourage the development and use of highly quality standards that are fit for regulatory use. So what's next? CDRH is driving standards, and they are promoting the use and the quality of those standards both domestically and internationally. At the domestic level, they are taking steps to improve pre-market review and reduce regulatory burdens. They are also addressing unmet clinical needs and improving patients' lives. They are taking on and leading new technological innovation. And internationally, we are pressing for the improvement of standards for regulatory use and greater convergence across countries and regions through the IMDRF. Someday, we hope, we can establish a single review program, which of course will be predicated upon a commitment to the use of consensus standards. Next, please. Here you have some numbers on the program and the progress to date. And summarizing this whole section, we can say that standards should be developed only when there is a clear need. And they are to be based always on current technology and sound science. And most importantly, they have to be developed in consensus. Also, another summarized point of all these slides is that the agency strives to incorporate those standards to guidance documents whenever possible and recognize them to fulfill requirements whenever applicable. These standards avoid barriers to technical progress at both national and international level and promote the inclusion of the technology, both existent and emergent. With the standards strategy, we aim to the goal of one product, one standard, one test. Next, please. So, continuing with the standards strategy and the vision of reducing the regulatory burden while ensuring safe and effective devices, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Medical Devices Single Audit Program, or the MDSAP. Next slide, please. Okay. The IMDRF at its inaugural meeting in Singapore in 2012, they identified a work group to develop specific documents for advancing the concept of the Medical Device Single Audit Program. This global approach included the development of an international coalition of countries dedicated to pooling technology, resources, and services to improve the safety and oversight of medical devices on an international scale. For many reasons, not all the IMDRF member countries were able to participate in this project. Either because they couldn't move at the same pace of the other regulatory agencies, they couldn't apply all the changes in the medical device legislation. There was also the necessity of country-to-country confidentiality agreements and other issues. So that is why only a few members of the IMDRF are current members of the MDSAP. But this really never diminished the support of all the IMDRF member countries in the concept and in their support in developing all the base documents for the MDSAP and the work in the working group that allowed for the current program. Basically, the MDSAP allows to cover the quality management system requirements of the 5 participating regulatory authorities through a single audit. So a medical device manufacturers would have 1 inspection instead of 5. Next, please. The current members of the MDSAP are the Therapeutic Goods Administration of Australia, Brazil, Anvisa, Health Canada. From Japan, it's the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, and the Japanese Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Agency. And for the US, it's the Food and Drug Administration. As the IMDRF, the MDSAP has observers. Currently, the World Health Organization and the European Union are the observers to MDSAP. Though the MDSAP is not currently open to new members because it is really cumbersome to re-review all the regulations, the frameworks, evaluate the gaps between the regulatory frameworks and requirements, include the new requirements to the audit modules, and train again all the auditing organizations, and also taking into consideration that the MDSAP is quite new and it is not fully mature. We have been receiving a lot of requests from other regulatory authorities to participate, to be part to the MDSAP. So taking into consideration all these challenges, that means to include another country, another regulatory authority in the MDSAP, what the program came out with is the creation of a new category. And this category is the affiliate member, okay? To date, the MDSAP has accepted the regulatory authorities of Argentina and South Korea as affiliate members. So in less than a year, we already have 2 affiliate members, and we are really glad to have this response from regulatory authorities and to see all the interest in our program. Another actor in the program that is not depicted in the slide, but it's very important to talk about, are the auditing organizations. These auditing organizations are the ones that actually conduct the MDSAP audits to medical device manufacturers. For an audit organization to be recognized by MDSAP and allowed to conduct the audit, they have to present all the documentation required by the members. They also have to take all the trainings on the MDSAP audit model and all the applicable regulations. That means all the regulations from the 5 regulatory authorities. They also have to demonstrate that auditors have not only the regulatory knowledge, but also the scientific background to audit certain types of devices. So not all auditing organizations can audit every single kind of medical devices. They have to prove that they are knowledgeable and they have enough expertise to do the audits. They also are audited by the members. So the regulatory authorities that are part of the council, of the MDSAP council, come and audit the auditing organization to confirm that they are conducting the audits and they are conducting all the related processes as expected. That includes documentation, that includes all the certifications they need, okay? So those are the auditing organizations and all the members, observers, and affiliates to date to the MDSAP. Next slide, please. I already mentioned some of the benefits of the MDSAP with regards to reducing the number of audits and the reallocation of resources. However, the benefits go beyond that. The MDSAP audits are based on the ISO 13485, as you may know, and it is complemented by certain requirements specific for each regulatory authority regarding marketing authorization and adverse events reporting that are not fully captured into the ISO 13485. These are established in the audit documents and allow for consistency among audits, notwithstanding the auditing organization. And also, it allows for a greater predictability of all the outcomes. It is also important to mention that each member regulatory authority may use the MDSAP outcome for different purposes. For example, Anvisa uses the MDSAP report as a basis to issue a GMP certificate of their own. In the case of Health Canada, they accept and in fact requires an MDSAP certificate as the Quality Management System certification to obtain a medical device license application. And they also use them to inform pre-market review, to monitor quality and other processes. The FDA accepts MDSAP audit reports only as a substitute for FDA routine inspections. However, all other situations listed under the FDA's compliance program guidance on inspection of medical device manufacturers still apply. For example, for cost inspections, when there is an identified issue with a product or claim, for pre-market inspections as part of the product assessment, or post-market inspections when there are commitments from the manufacturer that need follow-up, among others, we still need to conduct inspection. We do not accept MDSAP audit reports to use them as a substitute of this kind of inspections, okay? The other benefit of this program is that it also promotes the alignment of regulatory approaches and technical requirements that we expect may go beyond the current members with the category of affiliate members. Next, please. This new category of affiliate member is intended for those regulatory authorities that want to engage in MDSAP and use the MDSAP audit documents. As I mentioned before, the MDSAP program had received a lot of requirements from regulatory authorities asking if they could be part of the MDSAP. We developed this category in order to facilitate the use of the documents and the outcomes of the program by those regulatory authorities that are not members. In order to be an affiliate member, the regulatory authority has to demonstrate understanding of the MDSAP and utilize MDSAP audit reports for evaluating a medical device manufacturer's quality management system. Additionally, the regulatory authority staff should complete the MDSAP online training modules in order to promote a common understanding of the MDSAP documents and also to understand the MDSAP audit approach and the outcomes so they can use them appropriately and they can interpret all the results and the nonconformities, if there are any, in the appropriate context. Next, please. It is also important to mention that the regulatory requirements of the affiliate member will not be included in the MDSAP audit module. I already described a little bit about the challenges to open again the audit model and include new regulatory requirements. So this, for the affiliate membership, their regulatory requirements are not to be included in the MDSAP audit model. Additionally, the affiliate members should request the audit report from the medical device manufacturer based on information on the sites audited provided by the MDSAP. That is, the MDSAP program is going to be providing the list of the sites that have been or will be audited under an MDSAP, under the MDSAP program, and then the affiliate membership or the affiliate member should request the audit reports from the medical device manufacturer directly. It is expected that this category increases the number of jurisdictions using the MDSAP audit results for regulatory decision, making them more cost-effective for the medical devices manufacturers, and also allow participating regulatory agencies to reallocate inspectional resources as well as access to MDSAP training for their investigator, addition to the online training modules. Furthermore, the affiliate members will have more opportunities of collaboration with the MDSAP regulatory authorities, which in turn we believe would enable regulatory alignment. Summarizing all the MDSAP, for FDA, the program has presented some challenges. It has required the reorganization of the Center of Devices and Radiological Health, the CRH. It also raised the need to educate internal stakeholders on the program and its benefits to the agency. You know, there is always some resistance to change within organizations, and we are not exempt of that. So we have had to develop all this training for our staff. We have also had to create an internal tracking system for all these audits that are made outside the FDA inspection system. However, all these challenges, the MDSAP has also had successes within the agency. It has proven to be a consistent source of quality systems intelligence. It also has allowed for the reallocation of resources, as well as the engagement with auditing organizations, partner countries, and potential affiliate members. Next, please. As I mentioned, the MDSAP audit module is based on the ISO 13485. Next, please. So the ISO 13485 outlines the quality system management requirements for medical devices throughout the whole life cycle. This standard is not only relevant to administrative issues related to the medical devices, Its implementation requires a comprehensive alignment of the whole process and operation involved. Since it is used globally, it was identified as the basis to build the MDSAP model. Further, 3 out of 5 jurisdictions participating in the MDSAP already recognized this standard when the MDSAP was developed, which facilitated the whole process. Next, please. I highlighted here the fact that the quality management systems are not only related to manufacturing, since at least in the agency, we have encountered in the meetings that we have internationally that in some instances, the belief is that these requirements and the ISO 13485 only apply to manufacturing and to the administrative part of the process in some cases. So this misconception has created, in some instances, the development of duplicative local standards and overregulation. As implemented by the MDSAP audit module, the ISO 13485 allows for a comprehensive assessment of the medical devices, and they ensure their safety and performance while they offer enough flexibility to accommodate the diverse medical devices, their manufacturing processes, and all the complex supply chains. Next, please. So you can see in the slide the 8 clauses of the ISO 13485. Don't worry, I'm not going to discuss all those clauses. The only thing I want is just to have a visual representation on what I was talking about in the last slide. The approach in the ISO 13485 is sequential and takes into consideration the interaction among the processes, which provides the flexibility and makes it all-encompassing. Okay, next slide, please. So, additional to FDA participating in the MDSAP and taking into consideration all the benefits of the ISO 13485 that I just pointed out, the agency is conducting other actions related to the ISO 13485. Next, please. The FDA intends to modernize the quality system regulation for medical devices, the 21 CFR 820, using the ISO 13485. We are aiming to reduce compliance and record-keeping burdens on device manufacturers. As some of you may know, the FDA has always had an interest in seeking ways to harmonize requirements with ISO 13485. We had this ISO 13485 voluntary audit report submission pilot program that was the precursor of the MDSAP. The reasons to have this program were the recognition of the fact that there are more audits performed to ensure compliance with ISO 13485 than FDA inspections to ensure compliance with the 21 CFR 820. Also, the ISO 13485 audits are performed both domestically and internationally, and they would provide a more efficient use of FDA inspection and resources than focusing all our resources into the inspection of the CFR 820. Currently, this program, the Voluntary Audit Report Submission Pilot Program, is no longer active since the MDSAP is now fully implemented. Next slide, please. So, based on the earlier program and the MDSAP outcomes, the agency is taking the next step to use the ISO 13485. To start the process, FDA conducted the evaluation and mapping of the 13485 clauses and the US regulatory requirements. And we found there were many similarities, and in fact, the differences are minor. With this result and the opportunities of regulatory convergence from the use of the ISO 13485, as well as the opportunities for devices manufacturers to have a globally harmonized QMS system, the agency continues the work on using the ISO 13485. We still have a lot of work to do to finalize this process. Believe me, there's a ton of work to do. For example, we need to update all our inspection models. We need to change our procedures. We are going from inspection to audits. We need to change our IT systems. For example, as some of you may know, if you already had an inspection from FDA and unfortunately had F483, you may know that we have a specific system for our investigator to report findings during an inspection. These systems have preloaded the items of the CFR 20, so the investigator can have a rapid reference, and also the system automatically populates the wording in the regulation facilitating the investigator's work. So these systems, all of them, would have to be updated with the ISO 13485 clauses. We also need to train CDRH staff. We need to train investigators. We need to train compliance officers, not only on the 13485 clauses, but also the criteria and what the agency is expecting, so we are all on the same page. And as I mentioned, for the process to allow for consistency and predictability. Additionally, we need to revise several guidance documents that refer to the quality system regulation. And last but not least, we need to socialize the whole project and also roll out outreach programs. With this, it is really clear that adopting standards and revising regulation is a long, high investment process. But in the long run, the return of investment is certainly worth it. Next, please. So with this, I end my presentation. I really appreciate your attention and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Patty, thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation. We know and acknowledge that it was really a great challenge because they were so different among themselves, but at the same time, so very important for us to continue developing our understanding on all these topics. So really, thank you very much for your presentation. And we have received several questions from the audience. So I'd appreciate if we can then get into those. The first question we have received comes from Elizabeth George at Phillips. And her question is, will the Latin American countries recognize an MDSAP audit report to support the need for their local regional audit?
Thank you. It depends on the country. So far, we know that ANVISA, which is a member, it's a Latin America country, they already use them to issue their own GMP certificate. Argentina, now that they have become an affiliate member, they are working towards the acceptance of MDSAP audit reports and certificates. And we at the Latin America office, we are working with other regulatory authorities in order for them to better understand the MDSAP, the benefits, and also to be prepared to submit their membership as affiliate member. So we are working on that because we really believe that it's something that would help them with their resources and to make a better use of all the resources they have. And also because for us, as I have mentioned, the idea is to have a more standardized world out there. So we are working with them, but so far as we know, the ones that approve and accept is Visa.
Okay, thank you very much, Patty. From Stephen Vibes, we have a series of questions, and the first one he's addressing, and thank you for an excellent presentation. And his question is, could you please elaborate on how the CDRH recommends a medical device regulatory agency with a much smaller staff than the FDA can and should engage in international standardization with standards developing organizations?
Okay. The Latin America office works directly with CDRH, and CDRH, throughout the work they do in international initiatives, throughout the review of the information that they receive, they identify areas of opportunity to work with Latin America countries. Okay, so our office, Latin America office, develops a program, and then we start working with the countries bilaterally if it is needed, or if it's something that it's specific to one country. So we sat with them, and we know we are, as I said in my presentation, we are always mindful of the resources. But if they are not able to have someone sitting in all the SDO's working groups, what we do is facilitate them with the information on the new standards that are being developed, and also helping them on the understanding and how it is going to be implemented, or the rationale behind the standards. And also we provide and highlight all the benefits that they would be having if they were to implement those standards. So depending on the country we are working with, we develop and tailor the activities, the collaboration activities that we have. So that's a very brief summary of what we do with the countries. I don't know if that's enough to reply Stephen's question.
Yeah, I guess it is. Otherwise, we will have Stephen complimenting. Yeah, he's confirming that this is great, and I think it really makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, it is clear to all of us that resources are simply not going to be enough as for every single agency to cope on all the requests that they are getting, not only from the industry, but also from other agencies and other institutions that require their active involvement. So I think that what FDA is doing by supporting in such a way regulators throughout the region is definitely going to help a lot in the evolution of the best understanding on the benefits, as you really very well highlighted during your presentation, on the utilization and reliance on international standards. So thank you very much, Patty, for your answer. The second question from Stephen is it fair to say that the CDRH has an implicit goal of creating 0 United States FDA unique medical device technical regulations or standards that are not based on international standards?
That would be like the golden goal for all the efforts. So
okay.
Yes.
Crystal clear.
Yeah, I mean that's what everyone would love to see at the end of the day.
And for us, and this is a conversation we have had in many different fora, is how critically important is for regulators in the region and for the industry in the region as well to be much better prepared and again in understanding and applying international standards and getting really an in-depth understanding on all these benefits, because simply thinking of resources, FDA, US FDA has recognized that there are not sufficient resources and that there is no need to develop these unique country agency standards, even though resources are many times bigger as compared to whatever other agency in the region. So I think this is something that following also WHO recommendations in regards of reliance, I think this is also an integral component on the path that we have to transit, and I mean we as a region and as stakeholders involved in this area to move towards. So thank you very much for being that crystal clear, Patty. The third question is, what advice can you give to the regulatory agencies to begin using the MDSAP program? Specifically, how or who do they have to contact for this?
Okay. There's a specific website in the FDA page and on FDA's website where you can find all the information on the MDSAP. There are also the contact points for the MDSAP. That's one option. The other option is we at the Latin America office are always open to help the regulatory agencies in the region to jumpstart their participation in the MDSAP, or at least in knowing more about the program. Other option is through the Pan American Health Organizations, the Working Group of Medical Devices. And either three of those options are very good to start working with that. Additionally, if as some of you know, the FDA has a page that is called CDRH Learn, and there are specific modules that regulatory agencies could access and learn about the whole MDSAP audit module. I mean, it takes you step by step throughout the audit process and the criteria and all the specific points that we take into consideration throughout an MDSAP audit. So if they want to learn about how we do it in order to better understand what the MDSAP certificate means, that would be a really good starting point.
Okay, thank you very much, Patty. One more question from Stephen. What advice can you, from Sergio, sorry, it was just from Stephen. What advice can you give to MD regulatory agencies to begin their engagement with the IMDRF, particularly if travel funds are difficult, like the standard executive dedicated review of IMDRF website, English-speaking staff, standards policy program, etc.?
And now that you mentioned the English-speaking staff, I guess that's one of the issues with IMDRF and MDSAP, and that's that every meeting and every document, it's in English. So we have been working with the Pan American Health Organization to obtain translations for the IMDRF documents. At least those documents are like the foundation of the whole IMDRF, and those that are the most critical for the regulatory authorities to start working with. So the idea is to start translating those. So that's one thing that we are doing. But the other consideration that I would make here is that everything is on the IMDRF website, all the documents. So I guess that before we or a regulatory agency embarks in participating in the meetings, there's a wealth of information that it's already there, that you can read it and start to picking up the pace to be prepared to start participating in the IMDRF. I know there are really a lot of constraints in travel funds, and the IMDRF meetings are in places that are a little bit far from our region. Next year is going to be South Korea, so it's not going to make it any easier. But there are a lot of working groups and a lot of meetings that are held through video conference or teleconference. So if there's interest in participating in those video conferences, they can reach out to the specific person that is in charge of the working group they are interested in participate and express that interest. And after they open this communication, the leads of the working groups could send the invitation for them to participate and start working on the meetings remotely. So that's something that they can do. And I guess that was the two questions, the language and how they can participate. Okay.
Yep. And complementing a little bit of on what I mean, And getting further into what you responded in regards of PAHO being involved in the translations of at least the documents that are considered like critical for a start point, is there any visibility on the timing that those documents are going to be available in Spanish?
No, unfortunately, the emergency really hurt us a lot. Has a lot of impact. We were talking about that in February, and we were working on identifying all these products that all these documents that would be like the first one to be translated, because we were dealing a little bit on okay, we're going to do the translation. It is going to be recognized by the IMDRF or not, or it's going to be like an unofficial translation to facilitate understanding. So we were discussing on those issues for the translations when the COVID-19 emergency hit, and we had to stop all those discussions. So unfortunately, we do not have right now the number of documents or the date of when they would be ready or available.
Okay, and I think you bring a great point in here, because it is not a matter of just having a simple translation. It really has to be a translation that is recognized by IMDRF, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patty. We have another question from Sergio Madeira, Brazil. How many plants around the world are recognized by FDA using MDSAP? And following to this is by region and through ISO 13485.
Okay. I don't have the number. I apologize for that one. I can send it afterwards if you like. What I have as an example is last year we reviewed 991 MDSAP audits reports versus 1,150 FDA inspections. So last year it was almost 50-50 what we have on inspections. So that may give them a hint of how it is already working for us, the MDSAP. But be mindful that these are only related to routine inspections. It's pre-market, forecast, and everything other that I mentioned in the presentation are not included in here. But I certainly would share the number afterwards.
Thank you very much. And this is really a pretty impressive number. I think that for the length of the program being in place, being close to 50-50, I don't know how does that match with the objectives that had been established, but at least without having a reference, it seems to be like it is progressing really, really fast.
Yes, yeah, it is. And as I said, it is freeing the resources to do another kind of regulatory action. So for us, it's been really, really beneficial.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Stephen Bax. Is it possible for a medical device regulatory authority to use the MDSAP program? It means accept the MDSAP audits if they continue to use a country-unique GMP regulation that is not necessarily based on ISO 13485?
Yes. I mean, if you are a regulatory authority that you have your own GMP regulation, and if you review the MDSAP audit model, and it looks like it could cover what you are expecting from quality system management system inspection, then what you can do is ask the manufacturer to share their audit certificate or their audit report. And it is for the manufacturer and the contract they have with the auditing organization to get the audit report or the certificate and share it with the regulatory authority. And it's also for the regulatory authority to decide if they're going to be reliant on this certificate. I mean, we are open, and the regulatory authorities are free to accept MDSAP certificates if the regulation allows for it. And it would be really useful for us and for them to start accepting the MDSAP certificates, because that would be a better return of investment for the industry, for the manufacturers that already paid for an MDSAP audit.
Mhm. Okay, and probably in this sense, it would be interesting to learn your thoughts and expectations from FDA and probably Health Canada in regards of the imminent implementation, or actually enforcement of the USMCA agreement now on July 1st, that it's like two weeks away from now, where Mexico is supposed to be accepting MDSAP certificates. So any views from your side?
And actually, we have been working with CAFEPRIS on those also before the emergency hit, and we have been developing some work plans to address all the regulation and the alignment of the three regulations under the USMCA. However, all those activities were a little bit hindered by the COVID.
Okay, yeah, I think it kind of like the world came to a stop in many different relevant activities, but that there's no room resources wise to tackle them because of the pandemic. And talking about the pandemic, we have a question from Carlos Torres Anaya. His question is, with the COVID-19, you know if FDA will make virtual assessments?
What I know so far is that investigators are being requesting documents from the firms that are to be inspected next, so they can review all the documents beforehand, and they come to the inspection, the actual inspection, with a better knowledge of the specific operation procedures, etc., of the firm, and make a more agile inspection. So that's what we are doing right now. It is not expected to have a whole complete remote inspection that with only the documents I'm gonna say that it is compliant or not. At least that has not been decided yet. So for now, we are only asking for documents and reviewing them beforehand.
Okay. Okay. Well, Patty, we have not received additional questions from our attendees. So from me, really, again, thank you very much for being with us here today. And I will transfer to Stephen Bipes, so he will help us with his closing remarks. So again, thank you very much, Patty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, and thanks, Patty, for the very informative presentation. I had forwarded my questions via the system along to Sandra, not wanting to dominate, but I'm glad that all of them made their way through to you, and I very much appreciate the responses and clarification that you were able to provide. For those on the call who have made it through the whole series so far, the webinar series, the initial 3, and now this initiation with the sessions with the regulators, beginning with the FDA, if you can believe it, we had planned to cover all of this information in one of the sessions in Mexico City on the first day, and then following the next day. Certainly a lot of information to absorb, and one of the advantages of having done this remotely online was to have more time to absorb it all and have a recording of it that we can go back to and share with colleagues. I know that we've had for all of the sessions, over right at 100, near 100 participants, quite a bit of interest on the context and the background, but also very much helpful to get the information directly from the FDA on how the agency implements the WHO guidance and uses international standards as a basis for the medical device regulatory work. So just a very much a thank you from AdvaMed and from the coalition, Patty, and we look forward to the continuing series moving forward. So with that, Sandra, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much to everyone attending the series of webinars. Stephen, thank you very much for your closing remarks. We appreciate, again, FDA collaboration with the coalition, and of course, collaboration from every single member of the coalition to forward also your needs in regards of further training and areas for us to focus in order to make sure that we achieve our vision of reaching our one standard, one test accepted everywhere. And really, Patty, thank you very much for your participation again. Thank you very much for all the attendees to our series, and look forward to meet you pretty soon with additional interesting and enlightening subjects. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great week. Stay safe.
Thanks, Sandra, and thank you for joining today's webinar to our audience, and thank you to all of our panelists. As a reminder, today's webinar recording and slides will be available to attendees within 24 hours at www.interamericancoalition-medtech.org. Please also visit advamed.org/events for information on additional virtual educational offerings. Should you have any questions, comments, or feedback, we encourage you to contact us at webinar@advamed.org. Thank you again. This concludes today's presentation.